So Dave Farina is just not very good at critical thinking. And the reason I say this is because he believes in abiogenesis and Darwinian evolution, that a prokaryotic cell became a eukaryotic cell. And his answer to the criticisms that this code and this coordination of molecular machinery couldn't emerge without an intelligent being doing it. His answer to that is just simply time. That time can create anything that an intelligent being could, even though our modern day scientists cannot create living cells without pre-existing living cells. So I want to go through a few things and just ask Mr. Farina and anybody who believes in abiogenesis to think about these, consider these things. So number one, DNA must be replicated, but the machines that do the replicating are encoded inside the DNA. So I want you to imagine that. I want you to imagine that the code for the machinery to do the copying emerged at the same time as the machinery. Because if you have a set of code to copy the code, but you don't also have the machinery to do it, it doesn't matter. Or if you've got the machinery, the molecular machinery, the proteins to copy the code, but you don't have the code for it, well, then machines break down, right? Proteins break down. I'm lactose intolerant, so I've been taking lactase pills, and you got to keep lactase pills, which lactase is a protein, an enzyme. You have to keep it from heat, or else it breaks down and it's no longer effective. And so, man, these biological molecules are very fragile. So time doesn't heal that or solve that problem. Number two, DNA replication tangles the DNA and needs to be detangled. This is done by topoisomerase II that is also encoded inside the DNA. So again, we've got a biological molecular machine, right? A machine, I'm defining it as a structure with multiple moving parts that accomplishes work. And so that machine has to detangle the DNA, but again, the code has to be in it. So it has to emerge simultaneously. You need the code for a machine that can detangle DNA while you need the machinery, because DNA gets tangled. Number three, a collection of genetic code doesn't matter unless one piece of the code is extracted, which is done by another molecular machine called RNA polymerase that is also encoded inside the DNA that needs to be extracted, translated, and protected from protein aggregation to function. So again, we've got all these. It's not a chicken and egg problem, because it's a chicken and rooster problem. You need a chicken and a rooster to create more chickens and roosters. You need genes and proteins simultaneously to create more genes and proteins. And no scientist has observed genes and proteins emerging without pre-existing genes and proteins or human involvement. 4, genetic code doesn't matter unless the code is translated into functional parts, right? So number 3 is talking about mRNA being extracted from DNA. You need a piece of the code taken from the collection of code. And this, man, it's got to be translated. This is done with a ribosome and tRNA. Biological translation literally involves code and machinery to turn that code into more machine parts. It functions very similarly to a 3D printer. You have code, a machine to turn the code into parts, and the material to be used by the machine. Watch scientifically accurate animations of this. So it functions very similarly to a 3D printer. You've got code and a machine to turn that code into more machine parts, but you need the material. All right, like in a 3D printer, you need, it's usually, I think, a spool of some kind of plastic type material, or whatever that is. Well, the tRNA is the material for the protein. It brings the amino acids. 5, before proteins fold properly, they are polypeptide chains and are subject to protein aggregation. Protein chaperones help prevent protein aggregation, and protein chaperones are also made of proteins and need to be protected from protein aggregation before they fold properly. So it's another chicken and rooster problem, and time doesn't solve chicken and rooster problems when you need things to emerge simultaneously to work together. And the thing about these is, all these are chicken and rooster problems, I believe. I'll have to wait till I get down and make sure I didn't write something that isn't. This was a just spur-of-the-moment video. But these systems need each other. So you've got individual things of genes and proteins having to emerge simultaneously. And then even when you have that, they depend on other systems. So you have chicken and egg problems that depend on other chicken and egg problems. Number 6. None of the previous systems that I mentioned matter unless there is an energy source. The protein complexes that produce ATP for the cell also need all the previous machines for it to exist, right? So you've got to have these machines emerging from biological translation, but biological translation needs the ATP to function. Number 7. None of the 6 previous things matter unless binary fission exists. One functional cell would quickly be destroyed. Look into the Fitz protein. So yeah, so if you've got if you've got a cell functioning properly and it doesn't divide, I mean, man, cells are not indestructible. Cells are fragile. And so if one cell got the 6 previous things right, then it doesn't matter unless it can multiply, because it will be destroyed. And then if you've got multiple what they call protocells, by faith they believe in protocells. If they have protocells developing some of these things, but you have one protocell that developed binary fission but it didn't develop DNA replication, it doesn't matter. What's the point in replicating something when the code is not in each daughter cell? Let's see, now we're on 8. The beaks of finches and stickleback fish, the stickleback fish don't have beaks, I should have wrote that differently, were once thought to be great examples of Darwinian evolution. We now know that is the product of epigenetics. Watch scientifically accurate animations of epigenetics. It shows clear signs of engineering. When you've got genes being switched on and off depending on what the organism needs, come on, that's clearly engineered, and blind faith in time can't produce that, or you've got to prove it. Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, I don't even need extraordinary evidence. I just need regular evidence that epigenetics did in fact emerge, not unproven hypotheses. That's pretty much all the scientific papers on abiogenesis and Darwinian evolution. It's just unproven hypotheses or assumptions based on ignorance, right? Like it used to be believed that the beaks of finches, different sizes, and the stickleback fish, them being able to transform depending on the water and the environment, that was believed to be Darwinian evolution, random mutation in time and natural selection, but it was really epigenetics and natural selection. Number 9. Look at the differences between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Read papers on people trying to actually use the scientific method for a prokaryotic cell becoming a eukaryotic cell. So, yeah, motor proteins and microtubules are in eukaryotic cells, not in prokaryotic cells. You've got, again, it's an extraordinary claim to say that motor proteins and microtubules emerged without an engineer, without a designer, without an intelligent being, right? That extraordinary claim, you need to provide some evidence that it did in fact emerge from just unguided chemical reactions and time. But you can't. So dear Dave Farina, dear anyone with blind faith in abiogenesis and Darwinian evolution, put up or shut up, right? Prove it. And you can't, right? Try, please do. I'm okay with questions are good. Hypotheses are good, but claiming that unproven hypotheses are fact when they are not, and claiming that God is an unwise or ridiculous hypothesis is ridiculous when we have so much evidence of a creator. I really recommend everybody watch scientifically accurate animations of what is happening inside living cells, both prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and Don't have blind faith, right? Don't have blind faith. And to believe in abiogenesis and Darwinian evolution requires blind faith.